First Contact and Defiance. The Volderi Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Glory hung in the void like a living constellation. At 25 kilometers from bow to stern, it was the undisputed flagship of the 7th Expansion Fleet. Its hull, fashioned from quantum crystalline alloys, captured and reflected the light of nearby stars, creating a perpetual aurora around its massive form. Weapons capable of sterilizing planets were positioned at precise intervals along its length, while its shields could withstand the fury of a collapsing star. Grand Admiral Zorax stood on the command deck, his 4 arms clasped behind his back as he gazed at the holographic display. His slate-gray skin was adorned with the luminescent markings of his rank: 15 campaigns, 37 worlds subjugated, entire species brought into the benevolent protection of the Volderi Empire. Today would mark another triumph in that illustrious record. "What system is this?" Zorax asked, his voice a resonant bass that seemed to vibrate the very air molecules around him. Sub-Commander Telva consulted her terminal. Designation Sol 3, Admiral. Unremarkable yellow star, 8 planets, 1 inhabited. The natives call it Earth. And their technological classification. Preliminary scans indicate. Curious readings, Telva replied, her brow ridge furrowing. They appear to have mastered nuclear fission, primitive fusion, and rudimentary interplanetary travel, yet their development seems uneven. Zorax's upper lip curled slightly. Another species stumbling toward the stars. Establish standard first contact protocols. Let us welcome them to the Empire. The holographic display shifted, showing the immediate space around the Eternal Glory. Dozens of much smaller vessels had been detected approaching from the 3rd planet. The largest was barely half a kilometer in length, while the smallest were no larger than the Dreadnought's shuttlecraft. Their ships appear to lack uniformity of design, observed Telva. Some show signs of hasty repairs, others seem cobbled together from disparate components. Zorax leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Are they even a unified species, or still engaged in primitive tribal conflicts? Unknown, Admiral. Shall I deploy the Vanguard? No need to waste resources. The Eternal Glory alone will suffice for this demonstration. Zorax settled into his command throne. Open communications. The holographic display shifted again, now showing the interior of what appeared to be the bridge of one of the larger Earth vessels. The being that appeared was Bictal, with pinkish skin and a covering of dark fur atop its head. It wore what seemed to be a patchwork uniform of different materials and colors. Greetings, Zorax began, utilizing the Empire's universal translator. I am Grand Admiral Zorax of the Volderi Empire's 7th Expansion Fleet. Your world has been selected for integration into our Galactic Fellowship. Submit your sovereignty protocols and prepare for assimilation. The human scratched its chin, then glanced off-screen. Hey, Chen, come look at this. We've got space Romans on the line. Another human appeared, this one with different facial features and a lighter covering of head fur. Ha! Fancy. Love the light show on their ship. Think they do weddings. Zorax's expression hardened. Perhaps I have not made myself clear. The Volderi Empire spans 17,000 star systems. We have subjugated species whose technological achievements dwarf your own by millennia. Resistance is. Yeah. Resistance is futile. Assimilation. Yada yada. The first human interrupted. Captain Morgan Kim of the Earth Coalition vessel persistent problem. And look, we appreciate the offer, but we're kind of busy right now. For the first time in his 300-cycle career, Zorax found himself speechless. Sub-Commander Telva cleared her throat uncomfortably. Captain Kim, Zorax finally managed, you seem to misunderstand your situation. The Eternal Glory alone could reduce your homeworld to molten slag. Captain Kim shrugged. Probably. But why would you want to? Seems counterproductive if you're looking to integrate us. Admiral, Telva interjected urgently. We're detecting numerous smaller craft deploying from the Earth vessels. Zorax waved a dismissive hand. Scan them. Minimal shielding, no discernible weapon systems, Telva reported. They appear to be maintenance craft. On the communication display, Captain Kim was speaking into a handheld device. Green light, everyone. Operation Gulliver is a go. What operation? Demanded Zorax. What are you? Listen, Admiral Zorax, right? We'll get back to your assimilation pitch in a bit. Right now, you're parked in a designated shipping lane, and we need to get some freighters through. If you could just nudge that pretty crystal castle of yours about 50,000 kilometers spinward, that'd be great. Alarms suddenly blared across the Eternal Glory's command deck. Displays flickered as diagnostic systems reported unexpected anomalies. Admiral, Telva's voice had risen several octaves. Those maintenance craft, they're attaching themselves to our hull. Impossible, Zorax growled. Our shields would. They somehow slipped through the shield harmonics, Telva reported, frantically working her console. They're drilling into the outer hull. Weapons status. Primary and secondary systems unaffected, but... Admiral, they're attaching devices to our sensor arrays. On the communication display, Captain Kim was grinning. Sorry about the house call, Admiral. Your ship is very impressive, but we noticed some design inefficiencies we thought we'd help you address. This is an act of war. Zorax thundered, rising from his command throne. Activate point defense systems. Destroy those craft. Unable to comply, Telva reported. Point defense targeting is offline. Wait, all external sensors are being recalibrated. Captain Kim nodded sympathetically. Yeah, your targeting systems are calibrated for capital ships and planetary bodies. Not great for tracking smaller, faster objects. We're upgrading them for you. Free of charge. Zorax slammed a fist onto his armrest. Impossible. No primitive species could penetrate Volderi technology. Oh, we're still pretty primitive, Kim agreed cheerfully. But we're quick learners and extremely nosy. Ever since we picked up signals from your empire 80 years ago, we've been studying your tech. Fascinating stuff. 80 years, Telva whispered. But we only entered this sector 5 cycles ago. Yeah, your communication protocols leak like a sieve, Kim said. We've been intercepting your transmissions, fleet movements, technical specifications. It's all very educational. Zorax felt something he hadn't experienced since his earliest days at the Imperial Academy. Uncertainty. What? What do you want? Want? Nothing complicated. We want to be left alone to develop at our own pace. No assimilation. No integration. Just mutual respect between species. Preposterous. The Empire does not negotiate with. Admiral. Telva interrupted, her voice trembling. The human maintenance craft have attached devices to our primary reactor housing. Relax, Kim said, waving a hand. Just some monitoring equipment. Your reactor design is efficient, but has some stability issues in certain radiation bands. We figured you'd want to know about that before. You know, catastrophic failure. Zorax stared at the human captain, his mind racing through tactical options, each seemingly worse than the last. His dreadnought, pride of the Empire, was being swarmed by primitives who had somehow bypassed defenses believed impenetrable. Admiral, Telva said, more Earth vessels approaching. Larger classes. The holographic display shifted to show a new wave of ships emerging from the direction of the planet. These were different, sleeker, more uniform in design, radiating power signatures that suddenly registered on Volderi scales. Ah, said Captain Kim, I should introduce you to the actual Earth Defense Fleet. What you've seen so far is just our civilian merchant marine. Helpful bunch, very community-minded. The new vessels moved with precision, forming a blockade between the dreadnought and the planet. Their hulls were midnight black, absorbing rather than reflecting light, making them look like moving voids against the star field. You hid your military capability, Zorax said, understanding dawning. Not exactly hiding, Kim replied. Just didn't put all our eggs in one basket. Some of us focus on trade, others on defense, others on exploration. We specialize. Admiral, Telva reported the defensive capabilities of these new vessels. They're comparable to our own. Zorax slowly lowered himself back into his command throne. And the remainder of the expansion fleet. What would happen if I summoned them? Captain Kim's expression turned serious for the first time. Then we'd have a problem, Admiral. One that would end poorly for both our species. Those maintenance crews currently crawling all over your magnificent ship. They've mapped every critical system. One wrong move, and the eternal glory becomes a very expensive light show. You would not survive our retaliation. Probably not, Kim agreed. But neither would a good chunk of your fleet. Is that a fair trade for one unremarkable yellow star and a planet of monkeys who just want to go about their business? For several long moments, silence reigned on the command deck. Then Zorax made a gesture Telva had never seen before. All four of his hands opened, palms upward. You have made your point, Captain Kim. What do you propose? A treaty, non-aggression, cultural exchange on neutral terms, established boundaries. We stay out of your empire, you stay out of our system. Fair. The Emperor will never. The Emperor, Kim interrupted, doesn't need to know the details. You tell him whatever saves face, that we're not worth the resources to conquer, that our planet has some terrible plague, that we taste bad. I don't care. Zorax felt a strange sensation building in his chest, something between outrage and, oddly, admiration. In 300 cycles of service, he had never encountered a species so audacious. Very well, Captain. We will negotiate. Kim's face broke into a wide grin. Excellent. And Admiral, once this diplomatic stuff is settled, you really should let us help with that reactor design. It really is a ticking time bomb. Turning the tables. 3 standard days had passed since the unprecedented encounter with the humans of Earth. The eternal glory remained in the outer reaches of the Sol system, now accompanied by 4 vessels from Earth's defense fleet. These sleek, black ships maintained a respectful distance, but their presence was a constant reminder of the impasse that had been reached. In his private chamber aboard the dreadnought, Grand Admiral Zorax reviewed the preliminary treaty terms proposed by the human delegation. The document was surprisingly concise, lacking the usual 1,000 pages of subjugation protocols and resource extraction schedules that typified Volderi expansion agreements. Non-aggression, mutual defense against common threats, technology exchange on an opt-in basis, Zorax muttered to himself, scrolling through the text. Extraordinary. A chime announced the arrival of Sub-Commander Telva. She entered, bearing a data crystal. The engineering assessment you requested, Admiral. Zorax accepted the crystal with one hand while continuing to read with his others. Summarize. Telva shifted uncomfortably. The human modifications to our sensor arrays have increased efficiency by 22%. Their fixes to the shield harmonics have eliminated the vulnerability they exploited, and their analysis of our reactor design was correct. There was a critical flaw that could have led to catastrophic failure under certain conditions. And they fixed this as well. Yes, Admiral. They also left detailed schematics showing exactly how and why these modifications work. Telva hesitated. Admiral, this raises uncomfortable questions about how a supposedly primitive species could understand our technology well enough to improve it. Zorax finished for her. Yes, I've been pondering that myself. He rose and moved to the viewport, gazing out at the human vessels. Even at this distance, they seemed to absorb the very starlight around them, like predators waiting in shadow. What have you learned about their history? Telva consulted her datapad. They evolved on a high-gravity, high-radiation world with extreme climate variation and biodiversity. Their recorded history is short by our standards, less than 10,000 cycles, but extraordinarily violent. They fought among themselves constantly, over territory, resources, ideologies. and yet they presented a unified front to us. Yes, it appears they achieved global unification only within the last century, motivated partially by the detection of our communication signals. Zorax's upper eyes narrowed. So the discovery of potential alien threats forced them to overcome their internal divisions. It seems so. And they've been preparing for this encounter ever since. Their technological development has been remarkably accelerated and focused. A harsh sound escaped Zorax, something between a laugh and a sigh. We inadvertently created a species specifically adapted to resist us. Admiral, Telva said carefully, what will you tell the Emperor? If word reaches the Imperial Court that we've negotiated with a species rather than subjugating them. I'm aware of the political implications, Sub-Commander. Zorax turned from the viewport, which is why we will not immediately report this encounter. Telva's expression betrayed her shock. Admiral, that's necessary. Zorax cut her off. What the Imperial Court doesn't understand is that we've encountered something unprecedented. These humans don't think like any species we've encountered before. He gestured toward the data crystal. They identified and fixed critical flaws in our technology after studying it from afar. They developed countermeasures to our defenses without ever engaging us in battle. And most importantly, when they held us at their mercy, they chose negotiation over destruction. You admire them, Telva realized. I respect capable adversaries, Zorax corrected, and I recognize potential valuable allies when I see them. A communication alert sounded. The holographic display activated, showing Captain Kim's face. Admiral Zorax, hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Not at all, Captain. We were just reviewing your treaty proposals. Great. Look, we've been thinking. That quantum crystalline alloy your ship is made from. Fascinating stuff. We've got some ideas about how it could be improved to better withstand radiation and micrometeorite impacts. Zorax exchanged a glance with Telva. In exchange for, we thought maybe you could share some insights on your FTL drive technology. Ours works fine for short jumps, but the efficiency drops off on longer hauls. This wasn't in the treaty terms, Zorax noted carefully. Kim shrugged. Consider it a good faith add-on. Neighbors helping neighbors. Before Zorax could respond, alarms blared across the eternal glory. Telva rushed to a console. Admiral. Multiple ships emerging from hyperspace. Volderi signatures. The holographic display shifted to show 5 Imperial cruisers materializing around the dreadnought. The 17th Battle Group. Zorax identified them immediately. What are they doing here? They should be patrolling the Cygnus Arm. A new face appeared on the communication display. The stern visage of Fleet Commander Draz, his skin bearing the markings of the Imperial Inner Circle. Grand Admiral Zorax, Draz's voice was cold. The Emperor has become concerned by your delay in reporting the subjugation of this system. Zorax straightened to his full height. Fleet Commander, this situation requires diplomatic finesse. I was preparing a full report after. Your report is overdue, Admiral. Draz cut him off. And now I find the pride of the expansion fleet surrounded by alien vessels. Explain yourself. Before Zorax could respond, Captain Kim's face reappeared in a separate window of the communication display. Hi there, Captain Morgan Kim of Earth. You must be the backup dancers. Nice ships, very coordinated. Love the matching outfits. Fleet Commander Draz's eyes widened at the interruption. What is this? Admiral Zorax, why are you allowing this primitive to address an Imperial commander? Kim raised an eyebrow. Primitive? Bit rude. We were just having a lovely chat with the Admiral about quantum crystalline alloy improvements and FTL drive efficiency. Silence. Draz thundered. I don't know what game you're playing, Zorax, but it ends now. We will demonstrate the true might of the Volderi Empire to these creatures. Alarms blared again as the 5 Imperial cruisers charged their main weapons, targeting the Earth vessels. Fleet Commander, I strongly advise against. Zorax began. Your advice is no longer required, Admiral, Draz interrupted. The Emperor has authorized me to take command if I found irregularities in your conduct. Consider yourself relieved. On the display, Captain Kim's expression had turned serious. Admiral Zorax, is your colleague really planning to open fire? It would appear so, Captain. I apologize, but I am no longer in command. Kim nodded grimly. I see. Well, that's unfortunate. He glanced off-screen. Chen, it seems diplomacy has failed. Activate the Charybdis protocol. The Black Earth vessels suddenly began to move, not away from the Imperial ships as expected, but toward them, accelerating rapidly. What are they doing? Demanded Draz. Do they mean to ram us? Fire all weapons. The Imperial cruisers released devastating energy beams toward the approaching Earth ships. But something extraordinary happened. The beams seemed to curve around the black hulls, as if bent by some unseen force, harmlessly dissipating into space. Gravitational lensing, Telva whispered in awe. They're manipulating space-time around their ships. The Earth vessels continued their approach, now moving in complex patterns that made targeting impossible. From each ship, smaller craft began to deploy, similar to the maintenance vessels that had swarmed the Eternal Glory days earlier. Destroy those small craft, Draz ordered frantically. Fleet Commander, one of his officers reported, our targeting systems cannot lock on. They're moving too erratically, and our sensors are being jammed. Just as had happened with the Eternal Glory, the small Earth vessels soon attached themselves to the hulls of the Imperial cruisers, bypassing their shields through means the Voldari still didn't fully understand. Admiral Zorax, Captain Kim's voice was calm but firm. I suggest you advise your colleague to stand down before this gets messy. Zorax turned to the image of Fleet Commander Draz. Commander, I strongly recommend you cease hostilities immediately. These humans possess technological capabilities we do not fully comprehend. Nonsense. Draz spat. They are a primitive species that should be kneeling before the Empire, not making demands. A new alarm sounded on Draz's ship, audible through the communication link. One of his officers appeared in frame, his expression panicked. Commander, the human devices are interfacing with our systems. Weapons, propulsion, life support. Everything is being locked out. Impossible. Draz turned back to Zorax. What have you told them about our technology? Nothing. Zorax replied truthfully. They learned it all on their own. On the main display, the 5 Imperial cruisers were now completely immobilized, surrounded by swarms of Earth's small craft. Captain Kim's face reappeared. Fleet Commander Draz, was it? Your ships are now under our control. Don't worry. We've maintained life support and gravity. We're not monsters. But you might want to reconsider that whole subjugation plan. Draz's face had turned a pale shade of gray, the Voldari equivalent of blanching with fear. You cannot do this. The Emperor will send the entire Imperial fleet. He could, Kim agreed, but why would he want to? To lose more ships? To start a war with a species that can take control of your vessels without firing a shot? He shook his head. Seems like bad business. What do you want? Draz demanded. The same thing we wanted from Admiral Zorax. Recognition of our sovereignty. Non-interference in our affairs. And maybe, if you're feeling friendly, some cultural and technological exchange that benefits both our species. A long silence followed, broken finally by Zorax. Fleet Commander, I believe accepting Captain Kim's terms is our best option. I've spent 3 days studying these humans. They are not like other species we've encountered. They do not seek conquest, merely security and knowledge. And if they're lying, Draz challenged, then they would have destroyed us already. Zorax replied simply. They've demonstrated that capability. Another long silence followed. Finally, Fleet Commander Draz's shoulders slumped slightly, barely perceptible, but to those familiar with Voldari body language, a profound gesture of capitulation. Very well. Release control of our ships, and we will discuss terms. Captain Kim smiled. Excellent decision, Commander. Your ships will be returned to your control momentarily. And as a show of good faith, he gestured off-screen. The holographic display updated to show the small Earth vessels detaching from the Imperial cruisers and returning to their motherships. Admiral Zorax, Kim continued, since you and I were getting along so well, would you mind facilitating the discussions? You seem to have a better grasp of humans than your colleague. Zorax inclined his head. It would be my honor, Captain. Hours later, as the diplomatic discussions continued aboard a neutral vessel positioned between the Earth and Volderi fleets, Zorax found himself alone with Captain Kim in a corridor. Your fleet commander doesn't much care for us, Kim observed. The Imperial Court values strength above all, Zorax explained. Being outmaneuvered by a previously unknown species is difficult for them to accept. Kim nodded thoughtfully. And you? How do you feel about all this? Zorax considered the question carefully. In 300 cycles of service to the Empire, I have participated in the subjugation of 37 species. None have ever challenged us as you have. None have ever offered friendship instead of servitude when they held the advantage. He paused. It is refreshing. Well, Admiral, Kim said with a grin, I have a feeling this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. As they returned to the negotiation chamber, Zorax reflected that for the first time in the Volderi Empire's 10,000-cycle history, they would be adding an entry to the Imperial Codex that didn't end with subjugation. Instead, it would begin with something new. Alliance. And somehow, that felt like progress.